The Star Wars galaxy is single-handedly born and bred some of the most powerful beings to ever grace the halls of sci-fi, and for that matter, all of fiction. Beings such as the ones of Mortis, the Celestials, the Bendu, the Father of Shadows, and many, many others have all risen to become prosperous and nigh unstoppable entities throughout their respective lifetimes, or possibly immortal eternities. A few weeks ago, I recorded and documented a video covering the top 10 most powerful Star Wars characters in my mind. In that video, I had a spoiler warning and also a disclaimer that I would not be including any entities such as the ones of Mortis or the Priestesses of Dagobah, or any beings that falls into the category of what an entity would be, due to the fact that Liz just gets polluted and populated with them and the other Force beings like Valkorion, Darth Nihilus, and Grandmaster Luke Skywalker don't have a true opportunity to shine. As this will be a longer video, I highly implore you, if you wish to marshal the Force strength that allows you the patience to watch this video, use the Force to decapitate the subscribe button, strike down the notification bell if you wish to excavate more tombs, and dust off ancient manuscripts with me in the future, and immerse yourself in Star Wars lore. It is your destiny. If you wish to ascend to the rank of Master, please, weary knight, go forth. But if you wish to repeat a year in Padawanhood, then please come back later, and then you will truly have the power that you need to comprehend the information I am about to tell you. So, my friends, let us begin as we uncover the most powerful Star Wars deities, the most powerful, supreme gods in all of Star Wars, ranked weakest to strongest. Are you ready, acolytes? Let's begin. Starting off at the bottom of Tier 1. Just a quick disclaimer, we shall be doing this in a tier system, with there being 4 tiers in total, with Tier 1 being the weakest and Tier 4 being the strongest, as we are going in ascending order. That out of the way, let us continue. In the beginning of Tier 1, and the weakest entity on this list, we have Soa, also known as the Infernal One. Soa was born an extremely powerful Force-sensitive male Rakata, who had been imprisoned in the Eternity Vault on Belsavis for nearly 20,000 years prior to the Galactic War, making his longevity a statement for any Force-sensitive. During a bombing run by the Imperial military, the section of the prison in which Soa was imprisoned and contained within was discovered. An immensely enormous male Rakata, so rose to power in a warlord as in the Infinite Empire of the species, well before the Empire's collapse. Legends later documented that Soa, leading an army that included his creations, the annihilation droid XRR-3, and the alchemical monster Garge, conjured 1,000 planets in his time, and he earned the title Infernal One due to his immense power. Among those worlds was the planet Korriban, whose native Sith people he ruled and governed over as a god. Sometime after Sith King Adas's rising up against the uprising of the Rakata, Soa and his infernal council of traitorous Sith were imprisoned with their army in the Eternity Vault on the planet Belsavis. Legend said that it took an entire army of Rakata and other ancient species to stop him and contain his immense dark side power. Soa was a tremendously powerful user of the Force, and was born with a midichlorian count even eclipsing that of Vitiate, the Chosen One, and Darth Sidious himself. He utilized a suite of combat and offensive techniques and abilities to both shield himself from assaults and to attack and brutalize opponents. These abilities included Ball Lightning, possibly a modified variation of Sith Seeker that Starkiller employed, hurling opponents into mind traps, and extensive telepathic and telekinetic abilities that allowed him to send opponents on lengthy airborne paths and to destabilize and manipulate large platforms at once. He could also summon an extremely powerful force barrier that was only overcome by dropping immensely heavy pillars onto his frame. He was also appeared to be gifted at alchemy, claiming to have created an army of slaves and the Moncha Garge. He was also a cunning manipulator and conniving tactician against his brethren in the Rakatan, and could manipulate Rakatan force-based technologies using his enhanced affinity for the dark side. having developed the Annihilation droid XRR-3, an incredibly powerful droid. However, his downfall was eventually in his personality. Soa had an ego that was stated to match his great size, stature, and power. He was arrogant, overconfident. Now, where have I heard that before? I don't know. And was shown to be extremely proud of his ancient accomplishments to the point where he would brag about them outright. When he eventually faced a strike team sent to halt and stop him, he refused to even consider the probability and possibility of his defeat, and instead proceeded to insult and belittle his enemies. An insult that would eventually bring an end to an infernal run after 20,000 years of imprisonment and growing his dark side power. Now, getting this most powerful Ricardo out of the way, the next addition we have installed into this list, the second weakest entity in Star Wars, we have the Bendu of Atollon. The Bendu was a Force-sensitive entity who resided on the remote planet of Atollon and claimed to represent the entire center of the Force itself. Being the intermediary between the light side and the dark side, Bendu encountered Jedi Knight Kanan Jarrus in 2BBY, and along with his Padawan Ezra Bridger, eventually was able to assist Kanan in the grudging task of recovering his sight using the Force. The Bendu manipulated the flora and fauna around him, proving that he had incredible nature manipulation, and was even known to have met with Ahsoka Tano. On his back was a heavy plating of armor, making him nigh impenetrable, allowing him to blend in with any singular rock formation on his power. A wise who was possibly speculated to be the oldest being in all of Star Wars. Bendu was a lithe and enigmatic being which resembled a giant rocky monolith with 2 eyes, a flat nose, and a long crimson beard. He was a nigh unopposed and powerful entity who could control and manipulate nature, including the Krindha species of Atollon. He could also sense and deduct the presence of other Force wielders from a great distance. He was a wise and patient teacher who believed that other Force-sensitive beings needed to learn how to overcome their fears, imbalances, and terrors through personal trials that he employed in Kanan Jarrus. Bendu was most notable for manipulating himself into a storm itself. Throughout Star Wars Legends continuity, we have seen beings such as Darth Revan, Emperor Vitiate, and Darth Sidious most notably, conjuring evil storms of dark side energy that can completely obliterate, assassinate, incinerate, and eviscerate opponents on the spot. However, Bendu literally became one, killing multiple AT-AT walkers by destroying them with historic lightning blasts, enhancing his size. This allowed him to be an imposing figure. Bendu's power was so great, it was even stated to have surprised Grand Admiral Thrawn momentarily, until he employed his tactical mind and strategic thinking, an IQ over 200, in order to outwit and defeat the Bendu. The Bendu was a Force-sensitive being, his connection being exceptional, as was his manipulation of the Force, an immensely powerful being who could possess incredible connections to the Force and could perceive the emotions of others. He also had the power to appear and disappear at will, a form of teleportation. Despite his ability to manipulate and create powerful storms by manipulating the nature around him, he was eventually knocked to the ground when Grand Admiral Thrawn directed artillery fire from remaining AT-ATs and Imperial cannons at him in the sky. He also had the power of foresight, being one of the most skilled practitioners of this ability, above even Anakin Skywalker, Darth Sidious, and Grandmaster Yoda. During his time, Bendu was thought to have lived millions, if not billions of years, and is widely considered to be one of, if not the first entity in all of Star Wars galaxy. Bendu had the power of foresight so great that he was able to peer into the future and predict Thrawn's defeat. After warning Thrawn about his future, he cackled in triumph and disappeared as Thrawn shot at him, leading Thrawn to believe that the entire engagement was just an illusion and a figment of his imagination. The Bendu is a truly mysterious, enigmatic, and exceptionally wise character who I hope to see expanded upon in the future. However, my friends, since he has come nowhere near to the top spot, we must be moving on to a more ethereal race of entities, cosmic beings. Yes, my friends, I'm speaking about the cosmic nigh omnipotent beings known as the Celestials. The Celestials, otherwise known as the Makers, the Architects, or Force Wielders, were an ancient, preeminent species that were present long before the dawn of galactic community and sentient species, and even the Rakatan Infinite Empire, believed to be responsible for a large number of artifacts and anomalous planetary formations, and species placements throughout the galaxy's various planets. What was little known of the Celestials hailed from the depths of xenoarchaeology. The Jedi and Sith alike theorized that the balance between the light and the dark sides of the Force was actually under the guidance and supervision of the Celestials, despite having all traces of them disappear by 30,000 BBY. Roughly 4,000 years into the reign of the Rakata, a powerful group of Celestials, called the Ones in Legends continuity, still survived on Mortis until a mission to Mortis in 20 BBY, which resulted in their deaths. It should be clear that the Ones were not the Celestials. The Ones were merely a family of Force entities that were distantly related to them. The Celestials are an entirely different species, and the Ones are merely descendants of the Celestials. Around the year 30,000 BBY, the domain of the Celestials was usurped when the Rakata slave race revolted against them, stealing technology from the ancient Qua race, another Celestial client. They waged war against several other servant races, enslaving them. Some hypotheses over the hyperspace turbulence in the unknown regions claim that it was to serve as a barrier between the Celestials and the upstart Rakata, to keep them out of meddling galactic affairs. Despite the Celestials' efforts, the Rakata broke through the barrier and waged a war of extermination and eradication upon them. The ancient grimoires of the Greer Enclave, which referred to the Celestials as ancient masters, recorded that their work was undone by curses unleashed by the Rakata, or the Soul Hunters, which they called the Grey Swallowing and the Hollowers of Beings, and further referred to them as Faceless Mouths and Eaters of Worlds. The Celestials were exceptionally powerful, and by 30,000 BBY. Despite their immense power, the Celestials were nowhere to be found, having dissipated like smoke in a wind from the galaxy, and the Rakatan Infinite Empire had taken center stage and complete domination over the galaxy, as they would for around 500 years, before the combination of their Lost Force connection, a horrible plague, and the rise of the Jedi Order would eventually usurp them. Similarly, the Killik species, a species of insectoids that had previously worked with the Ones, had vanished from the galaxy and migrated beyond the veil of the unknown regions, which was an act presumed to be attributed to the Celestials' own actions. After construction of Centerpoint Station and the Maw, a cluster of black holes designed to hold in the eldritch abomination Abeloth and keep her from escaping, it was claimed by the Killiks that the Celestials had grown enraged and angry with their kind, and emptying them from their homeworld of Alderaan. It was theorized in the end the Celestials drove the Killiks into the unknown regions after they devoured their own homeworld and attempted to lay claim to another planet. The Null, another entity I will cover later on this list, similarly claimed it had witnessed a sudden withdrawal of the Celestials from the galaxy in this era, meaning that the few beings that are still alive did know that the Celestials departed the galaxy sometime around 30,000 or 35,000 BBY and would not be heard of for nearly 30,000 years until 20 BBY with the arrival of the Ones. Now, my friends, with these mysterious Celestials out of the way, now we have a more fleshed out and revealed character. This character is quite mysterious, only appearing in the Old Republic video game. I am talking about a Devourer of Worlds. No, not Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger, not Emperor Vitiate, the Sith Emperor. I am talking about a being who utterly crippled 1,000 worlds, devouring the life essence of each one, and almost became, if he had not been thwarted, the most powerful entity in all of galactic history. I am speaking, my friends, about one of the Star Wars galaxy's primordial evils, the World Razor. The World Razor was an ancient dark side entity that dwelled in the core of the prison world of Belsavis by the time of the Cold War, the same prison that Soa would later inhabit. It was claimed that the creature had devoured entire planets and star systems, with writings and documentation claiming the entity to be the destroyer of worlds and as the eater of stars itself, a testament to his immense power. Almost nothing was known of this ancient deity, whom none had seen or spoken to in over 1 millennia. According to the cryptic and vague warnings of the Rakatan Empire, The World Raiser was Belsavis's oldest and most ancient prisoner, and its prison was created with the entire purpose to hold it. This was because the terrible force had a hunger that had consumed 1,000 worlds during the reign of the Rakata. In the tomb, Rakatan inscription spoke of the fury of the World Raiser that was only subdued by the combined might of the Infinite Empire itself, the Infinite Empire being, in my opinion, second to only the Yuzong Vong Empire in forms of savagery and innate power. This is also the main reason the World Raiser does not rank any higher. However, he is at the final installment in Tier 1, so we have to give him credit where credit is due. He is one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, and it was said the rage of this being was so great that if it were ever to be released, its power was capable of shattering the galaxy into two. During the events of the Galactic Civil War, the Sith Empire made the mistake of releasing the ancient Eshkar species, one of the most dangerous, maniacal, cruel, and malevolent species the galaxy had ever known. During their assault on Belsavis, the Eshkar evaded from their cells and planned on releasing the World Raiser to lift the control of the galaxy out of the warring Jedi and the Sith hands. The Republic strike team attempted to stop them, learned from the imprisoned Rakata intelligence called Failsafe that above the World Raiser's prison was a failsafe measure called the Burning Wave, which would drop molten liquid onto its cell, thus sealing it entirely from outside assistance. After the strike team was killed, the Eshkar leader called Galore. The World Raiser attempted to bargain with them for its freedom. It argued that it would get out eventually, and offered power in exchange for its freedom over the entire galaxy. The strike team refused, and released the Burning Wave, re-imprisoning the World Raiser for many thousands of years. Sadly, we do not hold a candle, and the World Raiser does not hold anything to any of the other beings on this list in terms of information, as the World Raiser is so enigmatic, concealed, and cryptic and ethereal, that the World Raiser has almost no information on him, but due to the fact he devoured 1,000 worlds, thousands of star systems, and stars themselves, we had to put him at the top and pinnacle of Tier 1. And I was definitely tempted to put him at the bottom of Tier 2, but decided against it, due to the fact that he was defeated by molten lava and sealed inside a prison. I personally believe that no one in the tiers above would ever have the capabilities of being sealed inside a prison, as they are just too wise, too old, and too powerful to ever succumb to that horrible fate. Now, my friends, let us move on to the first of a sect of Force wielders that we're all familiar with if we have seen the Clone Wars TV show, appearing in one singular arc. Yes, I am speaking about the mysterious ones of Mortis and kicking off their family of Force entities. We have the Daughter. The Daughter was an ancient entity of the One species, the living embodiment of the light side of the Force. The Daughter was a female member of the Force wielder species, native to the ethereal world and plane of Mortis, like her family, including of the Father and the Son and Abeloth. The Daughter was a being who possessed a unique and unparalleled connection to the Force, as the counterpart of her brother, who embodied the dark side. The Daughter was a paradigm of the light, while their patriarch maintained and channeled the balance between them, with their father's days numbered. The Force wielders lured the Chosen One, Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, as well as his comrades Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano, to Mortis in order to test his potential. It was the father's hope that Skywalker would take his place on Mortis, although the Daughter remained obedient to the will of her father. The son plotted to escape into the galaxy with Skywalker's help if he could. The siblings confronted each other in the son's cathedral until the father intervened, only to be eventually overpowered by the son, who had grew and augmented his power with the dark side as a result of the Clone Wars, and the conflict gorging his power. Ultimately, the Daughter sacrificed herself in an act of pure selflessness reminiscent of the light side, using Force speed in order to intercept the dagger of Mortis intended to impale their father. Though mortally wounded, the Daughter used the last of her powers to help Skywalker save his Padawan Ahsoka Tano. Afterwards, she was buried with the dagger that entered her life. Prior to his own death, the son visited his late sister's tomb to retrieve the weapon, remarking that she was one of the only people he had ever actually cared about. As a member of the Force wielder species, a being and species of godlike entities, the Daughter had inherited a strong connection to the Force due to her bathing in the pool of knowledge. a pool that granted her limitless knowledge of all events past, present, and future. She had no fixed physical form, often altering between a statuesque humanoid and a large griffin that was capable of tremendous flight. The daughter could also use skilled Tutaminis, one that was capable of matching the sun's incredible crimson force lightning, the most powerful force lightning in all of Star Wars period. She could absorb, deflect, and redirect the force lightning with this ability. She was also powerful in the use of telekinesis, as shown where she was able to force the sun up and bring him back down on the ground, knocking him out of his griffin and gargoyle form. She could also use the force to hold and bind the sun in place. She was also able to employ powerful force pushes, as shown where she inflicted and induced upon the sun to go out of his gargoyle form with one singular push. The daughter could also fly, and seemed to have a spiritual connection with her bird, Mirai. When sacrificing herself, the daughter was able to use the force to enhance and bolster her physical speed, reaching the sun before he could strike and pierce the dagger of Mortis through their father. At the end of her life, the daughter's power was enough to resurrect the late Padawan Ahsoka Tano, who had been corrupted by the sun, by using Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, as the conduit, resurrecting the apprentice from the dead. The one known weapon capable of harming her was the dagger of Mortis. When the sun accidentally stabbed her with it, she became mortal and perished, being the first one of the ones to ever perish. Now, my friends, we are moving on to the alter ego and the second installment in Tier 2, the alter ego, an exact opposite of the daughter, and curiously enough, her own brother. We have the living, breathing embodiment of the dark side of the Force. We have the son of Mortis. The son, in more ways than one, was indirectly the exact opposite of his sister. The son was the incarnation and embodiment of the dark side of the Force in its entirety. He resided in the ethereal plane of Mortis with his family, a dynasty of immortal Force-sensitive beings who transcended the physical plane of existence itself. Like the other members of his family, the son was a shapeshifter and could malform his appearance, who possessed the power to transform into a winged gargoyle that personified his connection to the Force itself. Together with the daughter, the embodiment of the light side of the Force and his alter ego, the two siblings shared a mutual affinity for each other and a rivalry that mirrored the two opposing sides of the Force. The son longed to escape into the galaxy and plunge it and immerse it into a sea of dark side energy, but his ambitions were hindered by the efforts of his father, who sought to permanently bind his children to the plane of Mortis, where he could maintain the balance between them. During the Clone Wars, a civil war fought between the Galactic Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems, involving most star systems in the galaxy. The son grasped an opportunity to undermine the father's rule with the arrival of Anakin Skywalker, the prophesied Chosen One, in the desire to escape Mortis. After a million years of waiting, the son masterminded a plot to turn Skywalker to the dark side, as he believed that only the Chosen One could release him from the confines of Mortis, as the Chosen One with his full potential on Mortis was akin to the power of the Father himself. As a result of the son's actions, Ahsoka Tano was briefly corrupted by the allure of the dark, but the Padawan learner's fall to the dark side failed to turn Skywalker, as he and Obi-Wan Kenobi refused to harm the young learner. Instead, the son fatally ended up wounding his sister when he attempted to kill his father with the dagger of Mortis, an unintentional act that he came to regret. Despite the loss of his sibling, the son proceeded with his schemes to leave Mortis. Through the son's ability to foresight to see the future, Skywalker foresaw a series of events, all directly connected to his imminent future as Dark Lord of the Sith Vader, joining forces with the son in order to end the war, when the father erased the young Jedi's memories of the visions, so that the future would proceed without alteration. The son, once again denied of his chance to leave Mortis, fought with his father and the Jedi in a final confrontation, much to his own horror and shock. The father's suicide robbed the son of his immortality, allowing the Chosen One to impale him from the back with his lightsaber and kill the dark being. The son first appeared in the Mortis story arc in the third season in the television series Star Wars The Clone Wars, while the son's power were directly from the dark side of the Force, directly tied to the flow of the Force itself. Much like the Sith Lords themselves, his connection to the Force existed on a level beyond the domain of all Sith Lords. Not even Palpatine, Nihilus, Vitiate, or possibly even Abeloth, possessed such an innate dark side connection as the sun, nor did almost any other being in galactic history, minus one, who we will get to later. Given his existence as a manifestation of the dark side itself, and combined with the experience that stretched over eons of time, the sun's proficiency with the power of the dark side was great, even threatening his family members. The son, in my eyes, was more powerful than the daughter, as he was not only the one that ended up killing her, but he also was able to defeat her. He seemed, as in the Clone Wars TV show, to be the superior of the daughter, but only kept underestimating his opponent. The son was highly versatile and proficient in the usage of Force Lightning, which he held as his primarily offensive form. In my opinion, this lightning was the most powerful that any being could conjure, due to its association with the sun, a crimson coloration of red tendrils, that, with prolonged exposure, could rip someone of the Force, and in a weakened state, could incapacitate acclaimed Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi with a single blast. Unlike most Force wielders, the son's Force lightning was red. He also proved himself to be a skilled practitioner in several variations of telekinesis, as shown when he employed it against his sister in his citadel. An almost immortal being, and nigh omnipotent, the son was a highly skilled combatant, and only a handful of individuals, such as the father, the daughter, Abeloth, and Anakin Skywalker, were known to have faced him with success in battle. Like the remainder of his family in the Ones, the son wielded an ability to transform his appearance into virtually anything he wanted, aside from his primary humanoid form, which was a direct descendant of the Grand Inquisitor. Some favoured an appearance of a large winged gargoyle, which he utilised for purposes of combat and travel. He could move from place to place in an instant using teleportation, and adopted the forms of Shmi Skywalker in order to invade and penetrate Anakin Skywalker's dreams. And a diminutive creature during the Jedi stays on Mortis. Allegedly, he was able to grow stronger via the dark deeds of others, gorging on their fear, suffering, and the conflict he felt within them. He was even able, with the combined might of his sister, to hold off Abeloth, at least for a short period of time, as they were later dominated and required the help of their father. His ability to employ offensive applications of the darkness notwithstanding, the son was also able to channel the Force in less combative ways. The range of his more passive uses of power included his self-manifestation within one of Skywalker's dreams, the ability to appear and disappear at will without alerting others to his presence at all, and the unique capacity to literally infect an individual with the dark side's seductive influence, a power which gave him an enhanced measure of control over Ahsoka Tano's mind. All these powers came from and stemmed from an original drinking of the Font of Power, the Font of Power being an ancient dark side well that was created millennia before the sun's rise. Abeloth was known to drink from both of these, while the daughter bathed in the pool of knowledge. The son got all powers of past, present, and future that had ever been employed, and with so becoming the pure manifestation of the dark. In the son's form as a Fang god, per Night Sister tradition and religion, he was rumoured to be so powerful that allegedly, channeling a small variation and portion of his power, could burst and explode minor blood vessels in physical bodies of his followers and pawns, raising telltale bruises on their cheeks and around their eyes, though in fact these techniques remained both unusable and possibly harmful to the user after his death. It was said that he was the only one who conjured up the Wild Hunt each year on Dathomir for the Night Sisters. It was said that he could also see through the borders that separated his realm from the physical plane, though it does not make touch of his effort to do so. Well, my friends, with that, the children of the Ones out of the way, concluding the two siblings, we now have another being, the father of the Ones. Yes, my friends, I am talking about the father himself, the manipulator of Mortis, and the one being who cast out single-handedly the eldritch abomination Abeloth. The father was the patriarch of a family of deities known as the Ones, Force wielders distantly related to the powerful Celestials, and was once the most powerful Force user in history, and is unquestionably one of the most powerful Force users in history. The father maintained the fragile balance between his daughter and his son, who were incarnations of the light and the dark side to the Force respectively, in order to keep the Force in balance and the universe from being altered by their existence. At some point, the father was forced to withdraw from the temporal world with his children to a realm known as Mortis. After his mortal wife, the mother, came the infinite dark side parasite known as Abeloth. During the time of the Clone Wars, the father learned that the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, had been found, and decided it would be in his best interest to meet him in person, due to his ailing 1,000,000-year-old body. When Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka Tano visited the planet Mortis, Skywalker encountered the father on his monastery, and was tasked by him to pass one test, in order to deduct whether he really was the Chosen One. After successfully passing the test, the father asked Skywalker to take his place on Mortis to keep the balance of the Force, because even a one can die. This further cements the father's place in only Tier 2, and not higher in the ranking like other beings are. However, his son had his own plans. As he tried to turn the Chosen One into his side to unleash the dark side of the Force in the galaxy, the father tried to stop him. He was betrayed and nearly maimed by his son, who tried to kill him with the Dagger of Mortis, a weapon that was made and forged to be the only way to kill a member of the Force-wielder species, but was saved by his daughter, who sacrificed her health in an act of selflessness, with balance in the Force being tipped in the dark side's favour due to the son's existence not being balanced by the daughter. The father warned the Jedi they had to leave the planet before the son could use their ship, but unknown to him, his child turned Skywalker to the dark side, after displaying him a constellation of horrific visions showing the events of the galaxy and his inevitable life as Vader. Upon discovering this, the father decided there was going to be balance. Skywalker needed to forget what he saw, so the father wiped his memories. He then proceeded to take Skywalker back to his monastery. But once there, his son arrived and claimed that Mortis was not his destiny. The father tried one last time to convince him to stay, but to no avail. The Jedi proceeded to restrain the son, but they were brushed aside in an instant using the Force. The father, seeing that the only way to stop his child was to commit suicide, impaled himself with the Dagger of Mortis, and as a result, the son's powers weakened and he lost his immortality. He was then impaled from the back after the Chosen One. Afterwards, dying, the father was confident that Skywalker would eventually bring balance to the Force, and warn them about his heart. After that, he passed away, his body disappearing, sending the Jedi back to their world as Mortis crumbled around them. The father was a Force wielder, a species of godlike entities like his two children, capable of using the Force and manipulating the cosmic force in ways no other mortals could. According to the Jedi and Killiks, doubtful accounts claim that he once cast out and defeated the eldritch abomination Abeloth. Why, I'm sure this is true, and there is multiple research to deduct this. I personally believe that Abeloth was superior to the father upon analysation. The shapes he and his children embodied were merely a reflection of the life force around them. As head of the Ones, the father had a direct control over his children and manipulated them during many years. However, age was weakening him, causing him to slowly perish. Once the Jedi had set foot on Mortis, the Chosen One came to the father's monastery in search of answers. Upon his arrival, the father offered Anakin a place to stay the night due to the harsh storms. But during the Jedi's stay, the son appeared to Anakin in an apparition of his former mother in his dreams. Enraged, Anakin Skywalker refused the father of being a Sith and put his lightsaber towards his forehead. The father used his mastery of Tutuminus and touched the lightsaber blade by its hilt and forced it back into its hilt, much to Anakin's surprise. The father also demonstrated ability to teleport himself from one location to another in a matter of seconds, as he did during Anakin's tests, while the son and the daughter could transform into a griffin and a gargoyle respectively, as was their patron animals. The father also possessed the ability to sprout wings and possessed the ability to fly on a whim. During his children's fight, although he had been electrified and had been unconscious minutes prior, once he outflanked them, the father was able to stop both his children from fighting by pushing them with his superior mastery of the Force, throwing them out of a window in the process. His son, enraged, unleashed a wave of Force lightning on him, and though he was able to stop it at first using Tutuminus, the father was quickly overwhelmed by his son's mastery and new knowledge and newfound omnipotence from the dark side. The father supposedly was able of using Force lightning himself, allegedly hurling it at both his children when they began to quarrel. That when his son showed the Chosen One a vision of his horrific future, the father was able to erase a specific set of memories that Anakin had regarding those events with just a tap on his forehead. after his death. He literally vanished from existence, leaving only his clothing behind, and the ethereal plane of mortis on which he died began to shatter, just making it out that the father was tied to the very creation of mortis, creating a bright light that teleported Anakin Skywalker and his comrades back to their ship. In addition, when the Jedi returned to their world, time had not elapsed, showing the father had limited control over time manipulation and could manipulate time while they were on Mortis. Well, my friends, from the father, we now have the mother. The mother, a tyrannical being of pure chaos, the beloved queen of the stars, the bringer of chaos. I am speaking about the horrid creature, Abeloth. Abeloth, otherwise known as the bringer of chaos, and the beloved queen of the stars, was an extremely powerful force-sensitive entity due to the fact she drank from the font of power, giving her limitless power and unfathomable power in the dark side, and bathed in the pool of knowledge, bestowing upon her knowledge of all events past, present, and future. She was adept in using both the light and the dark sides of the force. She first lives as a servant, starting off as a slave for the mystical ethereal entities known as the Ones. She served the powerful ones on an unknown jungle world over 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. Throughout her life, she became the mother. She kept the peace between the father's warring son and daughter, and became a loving member of the family. Unfortunately, she was still mortal, unlike her immortal family. She grew old, while the father and their children lived on untethered, and she feared she would lose her precious family. In a desperate attempt to hold on to the life she loved so dearly, she drank from the font of power and bathed in the pool of knowledge. Her actions corrupted her, transforming the mother into a twisted, immortal entity known as Abeloth. When the father discovered her crime, he departed the planet with his children and left Abeloth stranded. The son and the daughter enlisted the help of the Killik Hives from Alderaan, one of the first sentient life forms, using them as workers to create massive technological artifacts after imbuing them with force sensitivity, such as Centerpoint Station and Sinkhole Station, to imprison Abeloth. According to the Killik Hive, Abeloth managed to escape her prison whenever the mighty current of the force was altered and the flow of time changed. Each time she escaped, roughly every few millennia, the son and the daughter would return to the Killiks and defeat Abeloth, encasing her back into her prison, a cluster of black holes that would come to be known to spacefarers as the Maw. This cycle consistently repeated itself for thousands of years, until the death of the Ones in 21 BBY, at the hands of the Chosen One and their own family, when Jacen Solo, otherwise known as Darth Caedus, one of the most powerful Sith Lords in the modern era of Star Wars, fell to the dark side in 40 ABY and became the Dark Sith Lord Darth Caedus. In an attempt to change the future, he unintentionally awoke Abeloth. She later managed to escape from her prison due to the destruction of Centerpoint Station during Caedus' reign. Taking advantage of the chaos the galaxy was in, she immediately sought to maximize its effect, to wipe out civilization and gorge on the suffering, possibly putting her at the very top of this list if she had succeeded. However, she was discovered and hunted down by Luke Skywalker and his son, Ben Skywalker, who consistently and constantly fought her, and even destroyed some of her avatar bodies. Ultimately, Abeloth took the form of Senator of Rokari Kem, and successfully got herself elected as Chief of State of the Galactic Alliance. However, her remaining avatar bodies were killed, depleting her strength. She was then destroyed by the combined efforts of Luke Skywalker and Darth Krayt in the realm of Beyond Shadows, two of the most powerful beings that were not godlike entities. Despite her death, Luke and the Jedi were not convinced Abeloth was truly dead for good, due to the fact a tentacle was left in the remnants of her corpse, and thus began searching for the planet Mortis. Luke intended to locate and obtain the same dagger used to kill the Ones decades earlier, during his father's encounter with them, to ensure that if Abeloth eventually returned, the Jedi would have a way to kill her permanently. Abeloth was an astonishingly powerful Force user, such that it was deemed impossible for mortals to comprehend her power. Jaina Solo compared her to beings like a supernova. She was described by Tahari Vila as a living Force volcano. Ship considered Abeloth to be much stronger of will than Vestara Kai or Jaina Solo, such that no one could command him while Abeloth ruled. Abeloth could command indomitably and unopposed the native flora and fauna of her planet to do her bidding. She also had the innate ability to influence the mind of Force-sensitive beings who had spent an extended period of time in the Maw cluster, causing them into a psychosis which made them believe that everyone, except for other psychotic entities and beings, had been replaced by imposters, and instilling in them a desire to find her. The afflicted Jedi, as a result of this, gained access to a plethora of new Force powers. Once the influence being found her, she consumed their life energy, killing them and gorging herself to higher grades of strength. The strength of her influence was formidable. Even when the Jedi learned what symptoms to look for upon the onset of the psychosis, they still believed that everyone they knew was an imposter. Abeloth called ship to her from across the galaxy itself, bidding him to come to her service, and Lily was able to use her mind to deceive the most powerful Jedi of all time in Grandmaster Luke Skywalker, into utilizing the pool of knowledge, reveled herself in the beatific psychic form to Ben Skywalker, and confounded a whole strike force of Sith to the point all of them failed to notice how she was slowly having them killed off, until Vestara Kai explained the threat to them. She was also able to control the Meditation Sphere ship, which was programmed to obey the strongest will, her powers overwhelming those of Sith and of Jedi's attempts to control the sphere. Moreover, she could mind trick whole rooms of lesser beings into supporting her political statements, and craft Force-imbued posters that would inspire those who looked upon it to vote for Darla. Abeloth's physical and healing augmentation was a dozen times that of Luke Skywalker, who claimed that her healing capabilities were beyond anything he had ever encountered. And this is Luke Skywalker we're talking about, the most powerful Jedi simply of all time, and a true god among men himself. Abeloth wielded exceptional telekinetic prowess, using the Force to blast everyone away from her during the battle with the Sith and the Jedi, choke Sith, murder the Chief of State with Force wound, and hurl around various aircraft. Abeloth's sheer strength was extensive. After a mental duel with Darish Vol, an utterly enraged Abeloth released waves of Force energy that were so powerful and released on Tav that it caused the beings in her vicinity to implode, those farther away to be ripped to pieces, the buildings to melt to the ground, and the glass and weaponry to fly through the city, looking for someone to hurt so they could feel the pain that she felt. The heat of the burning debris set much of the city on fire, and Abeloth was able to move around with the Force from across star systems and lived in them with ease. Her mastery of the Force extended to beyond star systems, being able to manipulate people from across the entire gap of space itself. But for all her power, even when augmented and bolstered by the suffering of a whole world, she was not invincible, as one of her manifestations was annihilated by a thermal detonator, and she would suffer wounds from blades, lightsaber blasters, and force-thrown objects that made it past her guard, though she was not always harmed as much as an immortal would be by such an attack. Also, she was nearly overcome by Darish Vol when she attacked his dreams, and he fought back with mind shards and insults, exploiting her emotional weakness. Moreover, Darth Krayt was able to harm her by draining her life force, though this severely injured him and Luke Skywalker just as much, and by recalling his severed hand that had lodged in her body from beyond shadows. Despite these weaknesses, the fact that each time her body died, her power was reduced. She could not truly be slain except for the Mortis dagger, and this was just purely speculation coming off Luke Skywalker's own ideas and from his reading of Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi's report on the mission to Mortis they embarked on during the Clone Wars era. Abeloth truly was something else, and as the final installment in our beloved Tier 2, she marks the end of an era. Now, we are moving on to Tier 3, getting on to the truly powerful and ethereal, unique, and omnipotent beings. Are you ready, Acolytes? Let us proceed to the ethereal world of the Wellspring of Life, and pay a visit to the mystical beings known as the Force Priestesses. That is right, my friends. Kicking off Tier 3, we have the Force Priestesses. The Force Priestesses were 5 entities that resided on the Wellspring of Life, the home of the midichlorians, and as many have theorized, the Force itself. The Priestesses were representative of the connection between the living Force as experienced by living beings such as Valkorion, Darth Sidious, and Luke Skywalker, and the mystical and more ethereal cosmic Force in its role in the greater scheme of the universe and its power. Existing within the Wellspring of Life dimension, the five were a form of shapeshifter and would mutate their forms to manifest as serenity, joy, anger, confusion, and sadness, the primary emotion any being could feel. Jedi Grandmaster Yoda encountered the Force Priestesses just prior to the end of the Clone Wars. They were the beings who knew the secret to transforming into a force speaker and transcending the ethereal world of life and becoming an entity in the force itself. Their leaders were Serenity. Though installments from the lost missions of Star Wars: The Clone Wars implied Qui-Gon Jinn had learned from the Force Priestesses and directed Kenobi into them as well. Canon material from the official databank and now defunct encyclopedia on StarWars.com still referred to Jinn having learned from a shaman of the Whills, the Ancient Order of the Whills having first been referenced in the novelization of the original Star Wars film. The Whills are another being that we will get to later on this list. The Force Priestesses, also known as the Five Priestesses, were the main obstacle to the secret of immortality. They were immensely powerful and had the ability to corrupt, manipulate the entirety of the galaxy as they knew it, existing in the deep core world. They might as well have been the gods of Star Wars, assailing beyond even the ones. The priestesses deemed, after Yoda's trials, the Grandmaster was able to retain his identity after death, deeming him worthy. The priestesses were speculated by Dave Filoni, the head director and producer of the Clone Wars TV show, to be the top beings in the Star Wars galaxy, originally one entity. They had to malform themselves and divide their consciousness into 5 separate beings so that way normal humans could comprehend their immense power. However, since such little information is known about them, we'll have to end our assumption here. And now, we shall move on to the Sexton's installation, established in Tier 3, an ancient demon of pure malevolent energy, a demon who almost succeeded in wiping out the galaxy itself. I am talking about the age-old demon, Whoopsek. Whoopsek was an age-old demon and was the last remaining Force demon known to exist by the era of the Galactic Civil War, a galactic conflict fought between the Rebel Alliance and the Imperial remnants of the Galactic Empire. A member of an extremely powerful and naturally Force-sensitive race that once ruled the galaxy in its early history, just after the Celestials retreated into the unknown regions. Whoopsek was captured by an evil-worshipping cult called the Five, who imprisoned him for centuries as a curiosity aboard their warship within the Hellhound. Whoopsek eventually escaped with the age of the Wookiee Chewbacca, after beckoning him forth to let him free, sometime between 0 and 3 ABY, and proceeded to swiftly destroy any trace of the Five, malforming them, shredding some, and utterly vaporizing others, killing them in very violent ways. An extremely powerful and ancient Force demon, Whoopsek belonged to a race that once ruled the galaxy in its early history and during its distant past. However, by the era of the Galactic Civil War, Whoopsek was the last of his kind. He was eventually captured by a reclusive, evil-worshipping cult known as the Five, which resided deep within the regions of space known as the Hellhoop. The Five imprisoned Whoopsek inside an angel trap held in their warship's recreation room, along with another curiosities, unique beings that they had collected in their time living within the Hellwood. Whoopsek bided his time for centuries for a chance to escape, and it finally came between 0 and 3 ABY, where the Five imprisoned rebel leaders, Leia Organa, Han Solo, and Chewbacca, while the Five planned to torture and kill Organa and Solo, like they had done so on many other unfortunate travelers. They did not recognize the Wookiee Chewbacca as anything more than an unintelligent ape, and placed him with Whoopsek in their recreation room, sensing opportunity within the sentient. Whoopsek telepathically convinced Chewbacca to free him from his trap, did not force him, did not play with his mind, simply asked, and the unleashed demon swiftly proceeded to brutally kill and absorb the souls of his former captors. Whoopsek repaid the rebels who helped save him by allowing them to go free, where he completely destroyed the Five's ship before resuming his free reign over the galaxy. What is known after the events of this and Whoopsek is unknown. However, we can assume that he retreated to marshal his power, and I hope to see him covered in the near future. Once an all-powerful being, extremely intelligent with amazing destructive power, and nigh unopposed knowledge of prior galactic events, Whoopsek found himself outwitted by the Five, who hurt his pride. He's the last of his kind. All the power that he accumulated, all the intelligence, was outwitted by the Five, and in the end, he grew to loathe them. His power on the dark side was so immense, he was even thought to outclass the sun. However, the sun's natural affinity for the dark side was far more impressive than Whoopsek could conjure. Anyway, my friends, the final installment in Tier 3, we have a being that is widely considered to be alongside Abeloth and the Yuzong Vong and the Rakuten Infinite Empire as the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known. This threat, while hasn't unleashed himself yet, could very well dominate the galaxy itself and could corrupt Coruscant within a day or less. I am talking about an ancient creature, a being that possibly even preceded the Celestials. I am talking about the Null Null. The Null Null was a prehistoric, amorphic black slime who was believed to be extraterrestrial and extragalactic in nature. His origins were shrouded in mystery, and it was a completely unique being, without analogue even in its species catalogues, as extensive as those of the University of Sambra. It was believed by many, including the Chiss Ascendancy, to be extra-dimensional in origin, and comparisons were made to it such as the Waru. It was so ancient, at least by its own account, that it existed alongside the Celestials and witnessed a sudden and abrupt departure from the galaxy. The hyperspace anomaly that bisected the galaxy, separating the highly populated portion of the galactic disk from the mysterious unknown regions, was presumed to have some kind created by the powerful Celestials, possibly as a defensive measure against Null Null and its infectious intentions. Null Null was an entity composed entirely of a thick grey ooze, able to move swiftly and create a multitude of different forms. It was slimy to the touch and smelled of sweet rot. While it was a shapeshifter, it could not form the complex disguises of species like Shidido, but its abilities were still versatile. It would form fire-raging presidopods and ice dwarfs to explore or interact with others, or even others, and with a fanged mouth. It could break its massive paws, spreading by creating worm-like forms, and was even able to fly, forming bat-like creatures. Null Null's most prolific and deadly form of movement, however, was by infecting and controlling other sentient beings. While it could possess creatures such as Nexu or Banthas, Null Null preferred sentience, and once a potential victim was in its sights, it went to work quickly. Once a being encountered a pool of Null Null, the surface of the pool would explode outwards, showering the being in droplets of the entity's body. Then the drops would begin to slide towards the being's mouth and nostrils, but it was also able to enter the body through the pores of the being's skin if the need arose. It would first penetrate the cranium and digest the brain, then move on to each internal organ and tissues, increasing its mass all the while. It digested its victims from the inside out, filling all its body parts as it grew. As it expanded and grew within the lifeless husk, within 24 hours, the victim was utterly and completely dead, fueled entirely with Null Null's malevolent energy. It could then fully control the victim's body, and was able to do so with enough precision to pilot vehicles. This is also how it obtained its sustenance, though it is unknown the nutrient obtained was somehow spread throughout the being's myriad parts. A Null Null possessed zombie could easily distinguish from a body's former self. The possession was evidenced by a vacant gaze, a stiff-legged gait, and utter stillness when at rest. The victim's voice was also distorted, as Null Null would have digested its vocal cords and lungs, or analogous organs already. Their voice would become bluzzy and fat. Null Null was not able to preserve its host, and after a week they would begin to decay and deteriorate, with the entity's grey ooze slipping from their facial orifices. The zombies were also able to further infect others by spewing Null Null in the faces of new victims, creating more new hosts. Over the course of its millennia-long existence, Null Null stakes its claim to thousands of worlds, moons, and space stations throughout the unknown regions, with infestations ranging from small pools in dark sewers to worlds ravaged and rendered as lifeless as the mud below. As Null Null spread throughout the unknowns, some species native to the region opposed its incursions and sought to decimate the entity, knowing the extreme danger opposed to the wider galaxy. The Lugbra and the Croc attempted to prevent any infestations within their territories, while the Chiss took a more provocative stance. They not only possessed the most extensive collection of information on the entity in their libraries on Stila, including the location of Mugfalo and all possible information on its origins, they also paid bounties to any parties willing to attack infestations of Null Null. The Vis Empire was decimated at one point by a Null Null outbreak. Other violent outbreaks are responsible for similar power-changing events in the history of the unknown regions. On some primitive planets, it was worshipped by local tribes and known as the Rot God. In later years, reports of Null Null existed beyond the outer regions itself, and it seemed as though it had managed to spread into wild space, and even minor into the Outer Rim territories. During the reign of the Empire, some beings noticed the similarities between Null Null and the deadly plagues created by the Imperial's Project Blackwing. Null Null desired nothing more than control, and subsequently sought to spread its body and mass and influence over as many worlds as possible, if possible, and would destroy entire planets as it had with Mug Fallow. But the idle amusement of torturing and killing other sentients was entertaining to it as well. Null Null delighted in torturing and consuming other beings. Indeed, it seemed to thrive more on beings suffering than on the sustenance their bodies provided its host. Using its possession capabilities, it would create torturous scenarios, such as reuniting a grieving mother with the reanimated corpse of their youngling time and time again. It would persuade other beings by playing with their emotions into making deadly decisions, such as opening a ship's airlocks or deactivating perimeter defenses. When conversing in its natural form, Null Null spoke in a dreamlike observation, often in verse, metaphors, riddles, and similes. Due to its long life, it also spoke ancient languages and conversed in long-forgotten conventions of speech, though it told tales of Celestials, Rakata, and the daughter of the Jedi Order. It seemed to know the current plots of galactic rulers, locations of lost treasures, and the answers to age-old mysteries. Some believed that every word it spoke was a lie, however. Well, my friends, now we have extended the welcome of Tier 3, and now we must venture into the unknown regions of Tier 4, populated with 4 abstract, omnipotent entities. These beings truly are the most powerful Star Wars has to offer, and in my opinion, are the most powerful creatures in all of Star Wars lore. Adorn yourself with Jedi robes, grab your lightsaber, and ensure that your blaster is secured to your belt, as we are heading into the deep space of the unknown regions to uncover the mysterious beings known as the Bedlam Spirits. The Bedlam Spirits were an omnipotent sect of beings, an omnipotent group of entities that inhabited the planet Bedlam near the Bedlam Pulsar, sometime during the Galactic Civil War. They were visited by Princess Leia Organa while escaping from a squadron of Imperial stormtroopers. The spirits were very powerful beings, omnipotent in nature, capable of manipulating time and math itself. However, their main weakness was due to the fact they were prone to childish behavior. They were split into 4 beings: Tiltony's splendid app, one of them being named Horlus, and the other called Danda Sign. They were all omnipotent with tremendous power. They were one of the non-corporeal spirits that inhabited a region near Bedlam Pulsar, and the first of her kind was Tiltony to take on Shace as they experimented with time and space. During the Galactic Civil War, Tiltony and the other 3 spirits met Princess Leia Organa, who was forced to land on the planet Bedlam while running away from 3 Imperial stormtroopers, believing she had invented form. Tiltony claimed she had created the beings and decided to play with them, inadvertently killing them in the process. After tiring of her playthings, she left, leaving her fellow spirit Splendid App to clean up the mess. Splendid App revived Organa and the stormtroopers, but accidentally transported the latter 8,000 years into the past by mistake. Yes, as if you could do something by mistake that easily. Tiltony was shown to have tremendous manipulation of matter and mass, as she was able to turn Princess Leia's heart into a diamond and make the stormtrooper's skin into a diamond. Horlus was one of the 4 Bedlam Spirits, transdimensional beings that resided in the Bedlam Pulsar, and appeared to have completely omnipotent powers over time and matter. He frequently argued with its fellow spirits, attended especially Tiltony, but enjoyed them in occasional experiments on the planet Bedlam. In one experiment, Horlus killed rebel leader Leia Organa by inadvertently turning her heart into a diamond, only for Organa to be restored to life soon after, where the spirit lost interest in his new toy. An incredibly interesting and careless remark. Splendid App is next on our recovery list, as he is the being that saved General Leia Organa. He was one of the 4 Bedlam Spirits that inhabited the region near the Bedlam Pulsar. During the Galactic Civil War, they learned to take on physical forms and encountered Princess Leia Organa on Bedlam, where she had been forced to land by Imperial forces. The spirits called Tiltony and Horlus decided to play with Organa and her stormtrooper pursuers, eventually killing them. After they tired of playing, Tiltony let Splendid App clean up the mess. He revived Organa and the Stormtroopers, but accidentally transported the latter 8,000 years into past events. Into the events 10,000 years, 8,000 years as well, in galactic history. With all 4 of the Bedlam Spirits having been covered and documented in our archives, we are now getting into the top 3 most powerful beings in all of Star Wars. Remember how I recalled earlier an ancient piece of dialogue depicting that while the Son was the purest manifestation of the dark side of the Force, he did not possess the most power within it. Do you recall that, acolytes? I certainly do. And now, I am going to truly disclose what I meant by that statement. Sliding in and scathing his way into the number 3 position, a being that could effortlessly beat every being in the Star Wars galaxy despite the 2 above him. We have the Father of Shadows, the natural embodiment of the dark side of the Force. While the son of Mortis, member of the Ones, was a being who was incredibly powerful on the dark side and was widely considered to be the living embodiment of it, the Father of Shadows was a deity referred to by Chell, a member of the Five. The Father of Shadows is the founder of the dark side. In many ways, he is like Ungoliant being theorized to be the embodiment of the discord of Melkor in the Lord of the Rings universe. He is the embodiment of the discord of the Force, the literal embodiment of the dark side itself, a being so powerful he could instantly play with the Bedlam Spirits like they were toys, make the Ones into diamonds if he desired, or make them clip his toenails. There is no being prior who even holds a candle to the power of the Father of Shadows. The Father of Shadows was a being who could control any dark side entity, or nearly any entity in this entire galaxy for that matter, manipulate matter, go through time, and traverse the galaxy. He could know everything, and had unlimited, omnipotent, and eternal power. His perpetual shadow covered the galaxy in darkness, and he is widely considered to be the dark side, a being of pure, unfathomable energy. The dark side and the Father of Shadows had the ability to corrupt any being he wished. Even beings as pure such as the Daughter or the Force Priestesses would utterly be transfused into a dark variation due to his corruptive influence and power. In the end, the Father of Shadows is an incredibly powerful being, having access to every single dark side technique that has ever existed in all of Star Wars, and possibly in all of fiction period. He is the most powerful dark being in possibly all of fiction, despite a few, and he is unquestionably in the top 3, arguably even higher in terms of the most powerful beings in Star Wars. Now, the Shadow's story concluded, and his unfathomable power recorded in documentation. Now, we move on to our next candidate. Coming in at the number 2 position, we have the Force itself.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
Such noble and wise words were uttered by Jedi Master and former Jedi Consular Obi-Wan Kenobi during his final year alive in the galaxy about the Force. Yes, my friends, the Force only misses out on the number 1 spot due to the unfathomable power it possesses. And the Force was an energy field created by all the life that connected everything in the universe, like a spider's web, and was known by a variety of names throughout galactic history. It was known as the Ashla to some, and the Luminous Mist by others. The Force was created by life, and therefore resided in all life forms. It was especially powerful in a select sect of individuals who were born with a concentration of high midichlorians, microscopic, intelligent, semi-sentient life forms that formed a symbiotic relationship with and communicated with the will of the Force to their host in their blood. These people were deemed Force-sensitive by modern Jedi and Sith, and were capable of conscientiously sensing the Force. With this conscious sense of the Force came the ability to harness it, direct it, accessing various Force powers. Unlike organic beings, droids, and other artificial constructs who existed outside the Force, as such, they possessed no connection to the energy field that was created by and sustained life. though they could be affected by the physical manifestations of it. Apart from its scientific aspect, the Force was the basis of various religious organizations who held differing views to the nature and purpose of the Force. These included sects such as the Church of the Whills, the Guardians of the Whills, the Church of the Force, and most notably the Jedi and the Sith Orders. In addition, the Lasats believed that the Force was the spirit of the galaxy itself. The Force simply is the alter ego to the Father of Shadows, with this being the pure embodiment of the light side, even more so than the daughter. This possesses any light side ability, any act of selfishness, all the power that it can muster. It belongs to the Force. It was a recorded concept, existed well over for 25,000 years. There were two overarching and symbiotic aspects of the Force: the living Force, with the energy of all light, which in turn fed into the cosmic Force, which bound everything in the galaxy together, and communicated the will of the Force through midichlorians. The Jedi followed a code of selfishness and service to others. Therefore, they adhered to the light side, one of two methods to using the all-encompassing energy field. The Jedi's adversaries and main antagonistic presence, the Sith, coveted strength and lusted power through the dark side of the Force. Their opposing philosophies led to a millennia of cyclical conflict between the two orders, and resulted in both the extinction of the Sith and the near annihilation of the Jedi during the final Battle of Ruusan, in which the entirety of the Brotherhood of Darkness was exterminated, leaving all of Darth Bane and later the Sith Lord Darth Xana as the only being remaining. The Force is truly one of the most powerful entities in all of fiction, and takes the second place of the most powerful entities in all of sci-fi, and only pales due to the fact that the next character we have, I have talked about previously, or at least name-dropped on the channel. This being has power like no other, and very well could be the most powerful being in all of fiction for that matter. Yes, my friends, be ready, adorn yourself with your Jedi robes, although I doubt it will do much against this horrific and all-powerful entity. We have a beyond omnipotent being on our hands. Yes, my friends, I am uttering a speech and verbal phrase about the historic Whills. The Whills were a community and sect of beings who notably wrote the Journal of the Whills, a document that recorded the most important events in the galaxy and galactic history, as well as physiological reversions and reflections in verse. There were shamans among them, one of whom taught the Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn that the ability to retain one's consciousness after death required absolute selflessness. This in turn leads us to believe that the Force Priestesses were servants of the Whills and their shamans, their mere presence in the wider galaxy. The moon of Jeddah was home to a Force-worshipping Monsiak order called the Guardians of the Whills, one of Jeddah's most sacred places. The Temple of Kyber was also known as the Temple of the Whills to other outside circles. The midichlorians, as stated by George Lucas, are the ones that communicate with the Whills. The Whills, in a general sense, are the Force. Star Wars creator George Lucas intended the Whills to be microscopic single-celled life forms, who are essentially God, the will of the Force, maintaining a symbiotic relationship with the midichlorians. The Whills fed off the Force and controlled the universe, offering destinies to sentients such as Anakin Skywalker, who was destined to be the chosen one and bring balance to the Force, and act as a tool by which balance was restored, to restore balance and harmony to all life, destroying those who violated and would continue violating the symbiosis of life, users of the corruptive, addictive force of the dark side, and servants of the Fathers of Shadow. The individuals were controlled by the Force's will, yet they had free will and control. All had a destiny if they wanted to adhere to it. The midichlorians were in turn symbionts with all of life. The midichlorians lived in every single cell of every living thing in entirety, and communicated to living beings the will of the Whills, the will of the Force. George Lucas's concept of the Whills aligned with the canon concept of the will of the Force, which was held by the Cosmic Force. Lucas said that he had held on to Lucasfilm Ltd. instead of selling it to the Walt Disney Company in 2012. The sequel trilogy would have featured the microbiotic world of the Whills into it. George Lucas originally intended the Whills to be gods, with omnipotent power that could not be measured by any single being. The Father of Shadows and the Force itself may be strong, with some of the most powerful beings in galactic history adhering to it, but the Whills were the rider, the equivalent and Star Wars documentary of the one above all from Marvel Comics. The Whills was George Lucas, the director, the producer, and finally, the Lord. George Lucas was the Wills, and the Wills was George Lucas. The Wills possessed every power ever known to man, and would instantly decimate almost any being in fiction, and unquestionably reign supreme as the most powerful being in all of Star Wars. Well, my friends, what did you think of this evaluation of the supreme deities of Star Wars, the gods of the Force, and the true beings in all of Star Wars lore? Who do you think reigns supreme? I would love to hear your list down in the comments below. This is just my apprehension on this subject. And I know powerful Star Wars beings can be a very nerdily debated subject, with people writing mini novels back and forth, stating why this character is more powerful than this character. It is a very intriguing prospect, which I hope to see expanded upon in the future. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. Be sure to adorn yourself in your Jedi robes. Clutch your lightsaber close to your chest. Watch your back with your signature blaster bolt. And prepare to meet one of these deities in person, as this is only the scratched surface of these malevolent and selfless beings' incredible, unfathomable, undisputable power. Goodbye, acolytes, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.